Hello and welcome to Table for Five with no reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation.
Thank you for taking a seat at the table. Tonight, we are going to be talking about work. Why you choose to work, or was it a choice? What we are doing right now with balancing work or staying at home. Tonight, I have Jen Dunn from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Hello.
Kim McIsaac from Boston, Massachusetts.
Hi.
Jamie Ramos from Denver, Colorado.
Hello.
Rachel Flanagan from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Hey, everybody.
And myself, Tabitha Cabrera from Phoenix, Arizona. So, Jamie, do you want to start us out with kind of your path in this department?
Yes. So on one of the other podcasts, I talked about how I used to nanny and babysit a lot. So it was always kind of my plan to be home with my kids in the beginning. I think it's also that thing my mom always worked throughout my childhood, whether from home or out of the home. So I never had like that stay-at-home parent all the time, and nothing bad, but I just wanted to be different. I wanted to be home with my kids in the beginning. So that was the plan. When my son came, I had graduated from film school a couple years prior. My plan was always kind of like stay at home in the beginning and then jump back in, or at least try staying at home. I did go back to work. I was working at a restaurant before that, and then when I was pregnant, and so when he got to I think about 6 months old, I decided to go back to the restaurant, and that actually really did help me. It was just a couple nights a week, but I had some postpartum depression, and getting out of the house in a way really helped me. As my son was getting older and things were kind of more difficult and he wasn't sleeping, I couldn't even imagine really working. I started nannying again. I nannied for a family, and then I just still to this day do really odd jobs. Like I sew patches on vests. I've done cleaning. I babysit other people's children in my home sometimes, whatever I can do to contribute to the family. But I haven't worked out of the home really in quite some time with a consistent daily job. And I think now for me, it's the fact that I don't have that option to not be at home. I have to be at home to take my son to therapies, to be there if something goes wrong at school, to pick him up. And if I did work, it wouldn't equal out with the cost of getting a daycare or whatever specialized thing I would have to put my son in, or even just a regular daycare for my daughter. So now I feel a bit stuck in life. I feel like even though it was my intention to stay home, I mean, I always thought, well, if I don't like it, I can do something else. But now I feel like a lot more stuck because autism came in our lives, and that changes a lot of things, I think, for a lot of people. So that's where I'm currently at.
Which is hard. It's hard to balance, especially the dollars. I feel like how are you gonna have your kids? And for our kids, we can't necessarily choose a specific daycare. You have to make sure that they know what they're doing with our kids, especially.
I think too, it was like the career, I was in filmmaking, and it's not the most lucrative career, or if it is, and you hit it good, you're working 12-hour days all the time. It's not conducive to a family life whatsoever. So for me, it's I can't really have a career in what I studied in. And so anything else, it would be well, I'm just working to pay for daycare. I'm just working to pay for this. It's better for me right now in my life to stay home with my son and manage the things that I need to manage for him.
Yeah. What about you, Rachel, and your life choices in this department?
I would say I'm pretty similar to Jamie in the sense that I had a plan. I had a plan. This is not it. I'm not living that plan. I was in small business, and I really liked management, like building policy and seeing that through and motivating and inspiring people to do more each day. I had a great deal of fulfillment in that. So I just wanted to be a mom that showed my daughter what accomplishing could look like. That was the plan. And I started doing that when she arrived. We adopted Celie, and I took a standard maternity leave and went back pretty part-time after that because we had a couple of days covered. And over the course of time, I changed jobs to make the hours more applicable to Celie's erratic sleep schedule. And then, it just evolved to where there was not part-time enough, or I could not be reliable enough to be there. So right now I stay home. And I don't know if it ever worked harder, whether she's in school and being cared for those hours or not. I am managing so much to make sure that our present moment is handled and that we've got like a sustainability and I don't know, we're in a crisis right now. So like, it's really a lot of today. I just did a whole evaluation on the phone. I would not have been able to do evaluation of my special needs daughter and then go to a 4-hour shift of any job. It just like peel me off the floor. I mean, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
I think too, probably like it's probably the same for you where of course we want to be home and we want to deal with these things for our kids. But some days I'm like, man, I'd love to go and be in an office and yell at adults or have awkward office conversations over this. It's the hardest job I've ever had. And I've had some weird, pretty hard jobs.
What about you, Jen, right now?
So for me, I have been with my company for almost a decade, but knew my boss, my employer, for 20 years prior to that. I am very fortunate. I am the general manager of the company I work for. So I have a lot of flexibility in the sense of I am fortunate enough I can work from home, which has always been an option in my position. However, over the last 2 years, that has changed drastically. I used to travel extensively for work. Our head office is in another province, and we have a warehouse across the country. And I used to do pop-in visits and stay for a couple of days and be with my team. I can no longer do that. I used to travel, like I said, and 2 years ago at a Christmas party, I got a call from my daughter, a FaceTime of her begging me to come home right now. And it was one of the hardest mama moments because I couldn't come home. I was in a different province, 12 hours away. And so I went back to the table, and in that moment, I looked at my boss and I said, I can't travel anymore. And he said, okay. And I'm very fortunate because I probably wouldn't have a job if I worked for anyone else. And to have that kind of flexibility is invaluable. So I'm very fortunate. But it requires a lot of balance, as it does with everybody. I am raising Kaya by myself. Her dad contributes financially, and I am very thankful and fortunate for that. So that allows me to have a full-time caregiver in our home and allows me to be able to do the things with Kaya that I do. So for that, I'm thankful, but I do it by myself. So there's not another body there to kind of pick up the slack when I do need to do things for work. So for that, I'm thankful. As well, he is very flexible. He's always said to me, at one point I was down a caregiver and I didn't have anyone to pick Kaya up from school. And he said, well, why don't you just leave every day at 2:00? And as nice as that sounds, the pressure that I felt every day having to leave at 2:00, knowing I have a team to be there for and a team to manage, 3 provinces across the country, I felt leaving every day at 2:00. I felt this pressure that I couldn't explain. And I was very thankful that he allows me to do that. And then when we moved our building to a larger facility, he actually allowed me to pick out where I wanted it to be so that I could be as close to home as needed.
That's so
So
awesome.
as we all know, especially, yeah, right?
Mm,
Especially
yeah.
moms, the phone rings a lot and you get the school calling and your heart sinks. And it's usually 4 out of 5 days a week that I would get that call and have to run and get her. So I am forever grateful for that flexibility to be able to do that, because I don't know how I would do this without that kind of employer. So I'm forever grateful for him.
I feel like there's that side of it, but there's also the point where Kaya has had a seizure at school. You've talked openly about it.
Yeah.
And if it was 20 minutes, I mean, just the daily is nice, but in crisis moments when you have this acute situation, like get me there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So I'm
can't
very
even tell me what's going on by the time you arrive in her parking lot. Like,
and the whole team that I work with is that, they pick it up the slack when it's needed, and it goes all ways and everyone's just there to support each other. But the love I feel from them about my daughter is, I didn't talk about it, as most people don't, for such a long time. And until I had my page, nobody really knew what happened in my life. Now they're all kind of going, kind of putting all the pieces together, And so I'm just really fortunate to work for the company that I do. And like Rachel was mentioning about time compensation, my boss has always said to me, Jen, I don't care where you put your 40 hours in because I know I get 80 out of you a week. So it was always this ongoing joke. He didn't care. Yesterday I was in and out and I was doing emails till 11:30 at night, getting caught up on things. So it's a lot of give and take. And again, I know that I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. Lucky.
What about you, Kim?
So we always knew we would need to be a 2-income family. We bought our house when we were pretty young, and I was in school when my kids were really little, and the plan was going to be that I was going to be a teacher. I specifically wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. That way I could work and have an income, but be home like during vacation, summers, holidays, stuff like that. We wouldn't have to worry about where the kids were going to go. Obviously, autism threw a big kinker in that because my daughter was severe at a time when there's no way she could go to a daycare. It just wasn't a possibility. They could never have handled her. So I didn't obviously get to do that. I did do 2 years of college, and my mother-in-law used to come and help out. She used to come watch the kids while I was in school. Like I worked Dunkin' Donuts, I worked at the video store, jobs like that. And then when Alyssa went to school, I went to get a job at a daycare just as an assistant. I wasn't like a certified teacher or anything, but I was able to work while they were in school. So like that kind of worked. Although it was also difficult being with kids all day and then coming home to my kids being one with special needs, but it worked for us. And then when I ended up having my daughter, Kira, it just didn't make sense because I could get a 50% discount with her at the daycare, but because I work part-time hours, I was going to make out like $70 a week. And if she was sick and I didn't go to work, I was still going to have to pay. So I'd probably be negative to have someone else take care of my child. It didn't make sense at that time. So then I switched into being a stay-at-home mom, which was great. I got to be with her. My other kids, I was working and in school, so I didn't get to be with them all the time. That's the first time I got to experience that. And it was kind of good because I did the stuff with her during the day. If she was up, we could sleep while the kids were at school. And then the other kids, Neil and Melissa, would come home. And then when I had my 4th child, Lexi, there's no way I could work because I'd be paying daycare more than I have to be home in order to get Alyssa off the van at 2:30. So it wasn't like I could even go and do a full-time job. I ended up staying home for 5 years. And towards the end of that, I have mental health struggles I'm very open about. I kind of went into a depression. My sister also was really struggling with addiction at the same time. So I think the combination of those things and being at home just triggered the depression. Tried different things to help that, but ultimately I think going back to work is what helped it the most. So I just got a job at the YMCA in their babysitting room. I could bring the girls with me. Eventually went to the job where I am now, which is at a daycare, which the plan was to work part-time, but part-time quickly turned into a full-time opportunity. I could bring Lexi with me, had the flexibility of leaving early a few days a week. And then my son, who was now in high school, was able to watch Alyssa. So that kind of changed things for us, where it gave me a little more flexibility. And the job is great. It's 5 minutes away. I started off as a teacher. Now I'm a director. I have the flexibility. Like if I need to leave, if something's going on, not only with Alyssa, but with any of my kids, I'm able to leave if I need to pick them up from school and drop them off. And being close to home, if I needed to get home, I can get home in 5 minutes. That's kind of what I think I just kind of lucked out with this daycare happening to open in the same town we live. I mean, sometimes it's lucked out. Sometimes it's like, did I?
Yeah.
Not being in a classroom now that I'm the director, it gives me a little bit more leeway because it's not like I have to find someone to cover my classroom.
I feel like special needs parents have to work within 8 minutes of their dang home or it's not going to work. At least one spouse, one partner.
And my other job was 20 minutes away. Now that seems far away.
Yeah.
Even thinking about maybe doing something different, it's like, how would that even work? What that look like? I mean, my daughter's 24, but she still can't be left alone. This is lifelong.
Yeah, for me, it the working stuff is hard. I've spent so much time and energy getting my law license, becoming an attorney. I put in blood, sweat, and tears to pass the bar exam. On my first shot, by the way, anyone listening, I'm gonna give myself a gold star for that. Lots of hours of studying.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise us.
But when we had Nixon, I owned my own practice with a law partner, and you have to hustle business as well as do lawyering. And luckily, during that time when I went back to work, my husband was getting his master's degree. And so we decided, he should just do school and then he stayed home with our son. So we didn't have to leave him until he was about 8 months old with anyone else. And so we'd kind of trade off hours. The thing about working in my own practice is that I could like maneuver my own schedule a little bit. Court doesn't really allow you to do that. But if I didn't have court or whatever, I could schedule things the way that I needed to schedule things. And then it just became too much. It was too much. It wasn't working for us. The grind of it all, you're constantly thinking about work when you own your own practice. You're constantly having to answer calls and emails. And, you know, my law partner was great. He tried to be as flexible as he could with me and supportive of, you know, my home life. He didn't have any kids at the time. And so I decided to go into government work, which also provided us with insurance, which thank God for that, because we need that business like crazy now, you know. And my husband finished his master's degree, but I started out in litigation. And so I was doing trials, and that was challenging in a different way, you know, like if you have a trial, you're thinking about it constantly, the facts of it, when you're in the shower, when you're at home. You know, for me, I was representing parents in dependency actions. So whether they were ever going to see their kids again, you know, it's pretty heavy duty stuff as far as the decisions that are being made. So I found that for my brain pretty challenging to be a mom and have space for my son at the time. And then a position opened up in where I am now, which is less litigation and more, you know, courtroom time for sure. But it provides me a space to be at home when I'm at home. And I still find it a struggle though. Like the childcare has been so challenging for us. We went through nanny shares, we did daycare, we got lots of calls from the daycare for both of our kids about how they weren't necessarily fitting into the classrooms, and before we had diagnosis for either one of them. And emotionally, it was just taxing. You know, I felt like I'm not making the right decisions by working. I'm not making the right decisions by them being in places that don't fit what they need and what they're learning, and all of that stuff was so challenging. But I'm with Jen that for me, my mental health, being able to go to a place where I am just Tabitha, that's it. You know, I'm still a mom, obviously, and I still have to deal with mom stuff, but I get to be just in a place where I feel like I know what I'm doing somewhat on some days, you know, for the most part. I have an expectation of how it's going to be for that day. I don't have to, like, when I'm at home, it's so, you know, we live as special needs parents in this world of like, we don't know what's happening on the day to day. We don't know what calls we're going to get, who's going to pick up the kids. And the hours, realistically, for even when our son starts school only goes till 3 o'clock. Like what do you do then? You know, or for us, we had developmental preschool before this, and it was like 2 hours a day. You know, you have to figure out someone who's going to come pick up your kids and all of that. So it was really hard in that space to decide what we were going to do. And for me to decide, and my husband, now he works from home, which is actually more helpful because someone's always here. Like if we do get a call from the school, he's 10 minutes away from the kids program, and I'm about the same 15 minutes away from the program where I work now. And so if we do get a call, we can figure out who can go pick up the kids or whatever. It's a little bit better, but it is still, like, for you guys, do you find the emotional balance of wanting something for yourself, not necessarily like your work, but knowing that you need a space where you can be you outside of the home, and deciding whether you were going to do that? Did you have a lot of weighing options for that, especially if you have someone else? You know, like I feel like a lot of times moms make the decisions on what they're going to do for work just naturally. I mean, it just goes that way for some reason.
Our choices were kind of sort of, it felt very made for us in a sense. At one point in like our best flow, Celie was 4 years old. She was at a daycare 3 or 4 days a week, depending on how it was going. Like we started at 3, added the 4th, took the 4th away. Like, but I basically, like, that daycare closed and we never transitioned. Like it was brutal. We were in a very, very small town in Wisconsin at the time. And when that daycare closed, it flooded the rest of any opportunity. And at that point, I think we maybe had the diagnosis of ASD and ADHD, but we were trying to like gear up for pre-K and thought that was just going to be awesome. We ended up moving before that. She went to a home daycare for a blip, of which she left to go to my work. She just wanted to walk to my work to see how I was doing, which is not super cool for 5. And it was just like lots of that. Like maybe I could keep my part-time job and they can be flexible and I can bop in at night to complete those emails that never got done because somebody called and I need to go get Sealy. But it just like upon moving here and having the transition so tough with the trauma of transferring everything in her life for her, it is not in our cars. Like there was never a choice necessarily. It was just like we've been reacting the whole time in regards to my job. My husband has a great job who we always have gone with his insurance, but it took a long learning curve of financially understanding how to make this work. And we've had the privilege of getting some help from my folks. We live in a house that my parents own. You know, we've had to adjust our sales so much. This is not like hey, Rach, what do you really think? Do you want to stay home? Like, would you want to be a stay-at-home mom? No, it's like nobody can manage doing 35 different finger paints in the way that my daughter needs with the attention to safety. And she can charm for a while, but she's going to need help. And so when that line breaks down, are you going to ask us to leave or are we going to have to feel like we should? Or it's just too much. It's too much.
I think too, like even for my husband who does work, I mean, we met in film school. Our goal was to eventually be filmmakers and freelance type of things. And that's just not an option for us. We have to have insurance. It's not like most people where it's like, okay, well, if we start a new job or we have a couple months without insurance, that's okay. Like we need insurance daily. My son's in a therapy daily. So it takes away options with that as well. And I think for me, something I didn't really expect was dealing mentally with not working and not contributing. I think that's why I do overcompensate. I say yes to a lot of little things to contribute money to our house because I feel like, I don't know, part of me probably feels inadequate because I'm not contributing. And that's just something I didn't think about. Or when we're at a party all the time, people are like, oh, so what are you doing? And I'll be like, well, I'm just at home. And they're like, oh yeah, we were at a wedding. Well, this was like a couple years ago now, with this girl we had known who was an actress and from film school. She's talking to me and she's like, so what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm just home with my kids. My daughter was a newborn at this point. And she's like, oh, well, that's good. You're probably going to watch a lot of TV so you can get ideas for making movies and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Nobody's watching TV. Nobody's watching TV.
That, like people think less of you.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a career or a real job. And I would love to say like, oh, that's just me putting that on myself. But people really do think less of you. They're like, oh, you're just at home with the kids watching TV and eating bonbons. I wish that I am eating the bonbons, but I'm not watching.
I always said I love my daughter more than anything in the world, as do parents. I go to work. Hats off to stay-at-home parents because that's not my gig. I mean, I love her. I love being with her. I miss her every second I'm away from her. But as Tabitha and I were both saying, it's literally what probably keeps me in a good mental health space because I leave my home, I go to work, I can sit in my office and listen to YouTube, like I said, and answer my emails. And I
would love to accomplish.
And drink a hot coffee. Drink a hot coffee.
I think there's just always that struggle no matter what, because working definitely, like I couldn't imagine myself being home. Like I could imagine it while I'm working and I'm like, oh, I'd love just to be home.
Yeah.
But I know I would get old and like after 2 or 3 weeks, I would not know what to do with myself. But then working so hard too, because it's like sometimes so much of your energy is already used up by the time you get home. You don't have a lot left to give to your family and to your kids. That is the part that I find difficult too, because depending what your job is, like a lot of my mental energy, I mean, I run a busy daycare. I run, 15 to 18 staff daily and 50 to 60 kids and parents. And some days aren't that bad and some days are busy. And it's just sometimes by the time I get home, I just don't have that mental energy to give my family. I mean, the kids are getting older now, so it's not as bad, but, or even to my husband, like sometimes it's like, I just want to I don't want anyone to
talk
bother
to me.
me.
I
So, like,
remember
kids
feeling
also-
like that, like I was out of words. Like, please don't. I have choice fatigue. I've got boss pulls around fatigue. I've got answer the
And now I'm
questions.
dieting on top of it. So really don't talk to me unless you have food on the table.
Trying to get into the length of this, Kimmy.
Then
Well-
yeah, I don't know. And I think that even though there is judgment, I totally agree with Jamie about like staying at home. Like it's like, oh, but there's also judgment for parents at work. It's like
Yes.
you get the other side of it where it's like, I'm terrible at everything. Like I forget stuff. I don't turn stuff in. I don't return emails. It's just, I'm just so bogged down with all that stuff. So it's like, then you feel like a mom for like I missed teacher parent conference. I just forgot about them. Like didn't go to teacher conferences a couple years in a row. So it's like, but it's like you're stretched so far. Like you're
for 5 kids.
you're, you're pulled in so many different directions. It's really hard. And then I try to work with my daughter and she has speech therapy virtually. So then we have to do that. And it's just, and then my other daughter, like her 504 hasn't been renewed in a year. So it's like, it's just so much sometimes.
Much for having a caregiver. People used to be like, well, that must be nice. I'm like, well, I don't go out ever. I don't leave my home. So yeah,
I need a caregiver for me to help me do all these
I
things.
mean, listen, Susie's amazing. There's no one that folds a better load of laundry than that blessed woman. But now I couldn't put Kaya in a daycare. I just wouldn't put her in a
No.
verbal, but she can't tell me specific things if asked. So,
Well, no, it'd be so
everyone else,
overwhelming too,
it's either you stay home or you kind of go that route. There's just really no in between on it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that mom guilt either way is so hard. It's like if you're working, you're losing in ways. If you're not working, you're losing in ways. I feel stuck and poor all the time because I can't contribute. I'm paying for all these therapies and not, my husband's the only one bringing money in, and it's just you feel crappy no matter what.
And I remember that too, Jamie. Like I remember feeling bad because like my husband would work like 3 jobs. He eventually stopped.
Get it, Neil?
Yeah. But so
Need a practice for home.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then like, I'd be pissed if like he came home and wouldn't watch a TV show with me.
It's hard. James, I have to say one thing that I've learned. I'm probably like a good 3 years into losing my career. Like it was a slow process, 3.5 years in, but I'm a stay-at-home mom, period. One of your least favorite words is just try melatonin, just whatever. I'm not just anything. So when somebody asks me, I try really hard not to say I just stay home because it diminishes this thing. I say that I'm Celie's teacher. I am the laundry bitch. I am the meal cooker. I am the plate picker upper. I am the punching bag. Like there is a lot to this. I mean, I will say anytime I'm talking to somebody, Celie's with me. And so she's like running around like a hurricane and they're like, oh, you do that
all day.
It looks like a job. Let your kids buck a minute next time they ask you that question.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time, I don't think that I would have been able to work because the stay-at-home times were her hardest times. I feel like even if I worked, I would have constantly been called home. That's just really hard too when you have kids that are behavioral and kids that, can't regulate, can't be safe.
And they're busy. When they're busy.
Well, it's not like you can hire a high school kid to watch her after school. I'm not saying every day is a horrible day, but like you're also dealing with a lot of stuff. I remember being so scared to be home with 4 kids, like her plus 3 other kids by myself. Like, how am I going to do this? Like, how can I possibly do this? It's like
Neil, get me a nanny. I need an assist. The ratio's off in this house.
But like what Jamie said, it's tough because like when you're not when only one person's working, then the money's not there. So it's like you can't even do anything. So it's like, so then you're dealing with those struggles on top of the struggles of just being at home by yourself. Like it's hard. And sometimes he wouldn't come home until 11 o'clock at night. So like It's not like he'd be
You
walking
make
in the
him
door.
sound like he's hustling. I just want to just defend my poor friend Neil and his Nike
Oh my
shoes. He was home
Because-
at 11 because he went from job to job to job like a damn worker of 3 jobs.
But what I was dealing
He
with
didn't
was
get
the
home
hard
till 11.
in dealing with aggression and dealing with tantrums and dealing with self-injury and dealing with toddlers and infants and all of those things. And it was just a lot. I didn't get that reprieve of like, oh, he'll be home at 5 and then I can have a break. Like it
Yeah.
didn't stop. And my kid doesn't sleep. So it's not even like I could be like, oh, well, she'll go to bed at 8 or 9. No, she didn't go to bed. She still hasn't gone to bed ever in her life.
She's still not.
She's still not sleeping.
It's a mental
She's
thing
like,
too that you're at home all the time. You're never talking to adults. You're, you know, it's like all the time with like he would go out for like work lunches and I'm like, what was it like going to a restaurant and talking to a grown up? Like you're always with
Wait, did
your
you use a
kids.
metal fork?
What'd you eat? What was it like? What'd you guys talk about?
Yeah. I think I relate to Kim in the way with the mind space of like, for me, I feel like I have 8 days in one. I feel like there's the morning grind, getting the kids to every place that they need to go. Lunches need to be packed. Then I go to work and my work is taxing emotionally. It just is. I'm dealing with people who have mental health problems, who have drug addictions, who, you know, are asking for your help and you want to help them and you need to put in the energy to help them because I have a law license I have to protect and do a good job, you know, and you just feel like you want to help them. And then I come home, pick up kids, do dinner, put everyone to bed. It's just like eight days wrapped into one for us. And I think for us, both people are working. And so it's like, who's going to do the house chores? Who's going to do the laundry? Who's going to shop? You have to do all of that stuff on top of a 40-hour week of work. And we kind of didn't really have a choice either of having someone stay home. Like we had to figure it out because, you know, we need insurance, we have student loans, we have financial obligations where we just could not afford to live off of one income. We couldn't. There's no way. And I felt at times when I put my kids into daycare, I'm like, I'm paying all this money for freaking daycare and I don't even get to be with my kids. You know, it's just crazy. It's really the emotional strain of that.
Like you said, Tabitha, like I remember there was mornings are really hard for Alyssa, especially when she was younger because she didn't sleep, so she'd be exhausted, so it would be a little battle, every screaming. It was just horrible. It's like literally felt like I put 8 hours of work in before I even left for work. You know, I go into work like I already went through a battle.
Well, and that's the thing is like you have to fit everything in no matter what, right? Like all of our providers and people that work with our children work 8 to 5 too. And so it's like, how am I going to make evaluations? How am I going to do school IEPs? I only get so much PTO every year. You know, like we have to have these meetings. All of that stuff is just like,
well, to go back to last episode, you're doing all those appointments for your kids. You have no, like, you can't be like, oh, well, I need to go to the dentist.
Right.
So I need to take another 2 hours off. It's all, you know, that stuff's all taken up because there's so many appointments and things to do.
Yeah. And for me, it's always like the emotional ride that's the hardest because I have to put in so much energy. If my kids are having a bad day, then I feel bad dropping them off in the morning. You know, like I don't have an option to just be like, oh, I'm going to nurture you and be your mother today because you're having a hard time getting to school. Like I don't really have that option. And so that is really emotionally challenging for me, especially with our son, because he's very sensitive spirit. And so some days he's just like, he's off. And then I have to go drop him off somewhere and be like, good luck. I mean, you know, like I have to go to work and your dad has to go to work. And, you know, we don't really have a choice to stay at home and, you know, just let you be, which I wish we could, but we just can't. So that part of it is really hard for me. And I went through stages where I felt like I wasn't doing anything well. I was like, not
Wait,
doing,
that ends?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's still like, I'm not doing well at home. I'm not balancing work. I'm not making all the calls I need to make to get everything set up. You know, all of that stuff with work is just, it's a crazy thing. I don't know if there's even a real good choice either way. You know,
like,
you just do what you got to do. type of
And
thing.
I totally get what you're saying. It's like you don't, n- everything's falling short in every area because like you're just stretched
Yeah.
thin and you're trying to be everything for all people and you
Yeah.
can't do it.
I don't
Trying
have an
to.
employer and I still feel that way. I mean, my boss is 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, like I mean, right now I watch another child every day with my daughter, and I feel like my house is constantly a disaster. I always have at least
Mhm.
2 kids around, 2 little kids. And so I just feel like, I mean, I'm sure for you moms that work out of the home too, it's like, who has time to like clean after all this? They just dump things everywhere and they do this and this. And I'm like, my life is constantly picking up things and constantly doing laundry, taking care of other people's children too. Like Kim was talking about, you're like, it's not really a break. It is different in ways. I do believe that children act differently for different caretakers, but it's just like not a break from parenting when you're
Yeah.
just parenting someone else's child.
And I hate to tell you this, but it just gets worse. Like when they're teenagers, they're bigger slobs than toddlers because then they're like cooking stuff, but like there's stuff everywhere. There's, now they're making even more of a mess. It's like, oh my goodness.
And they're not
yeah.
as cute anymore to make up for it.
Yeah, I feel like too with this autism diagnosis that we've had for both of our children, for me personally, my job sometimes can feel like worst case scenario for our future in certain ways. And so if I have a client that I can connect with in my personal life just because of their demeanor or their story or whatever the case is, these people have parents. These people have people that love them and care for them and were there or not, I don't know. Generally their life paths can be not the best, but you know what I mean? Like I have a struggle with looking down the track of if things don't end the way that I hope that they do. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with my children, but it's just there. It's in the background. I'm watching it every day. And so that part of my work can be very taxing on me sometimes. And then when I go home, it's like hard emotionally to leave it at work. And even if I just even hear the word autism from my clients or their family, I'm just like, okay, let me brace myself for what's coming next.
And I think just overall, I mean, for all of us, I think it's the fact that just for parents in general, but I think really for us, like we're locked down with insurance, we're locked down with our time. It just takes away so many choices. So like even tabs within your career, you're kind of
Yeah.
stuck where you are because of it, and that's how I feel like. I just feel like that choice has been taken away. This is where I'm at. This is the decision I made in the beginning. So I'm kind of stuck here, at least for now, and who knows how much longer. And you can't be on the search for what career or job's gonna make you the happiest. You're just where you're at. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, Jamie, because like I've, being at the same place for 12 years, doing the same thing, sometimes I'm like, sometimes I don't know if I'm ready to do something different or I'm still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But like, I also know it's going to be really hard to find a job that has the flexibility I need.
It is the balancing. It's like so mind blowing, and it always feels like a constant thing. Like there's always something changing, Any person who stays home or works has challenges if you have children involved in the situation. It just is. It's hard. It really is hard. Well,
I feel like this could be a whole series, girls, because the stuff that plays into this is how did you get the resources? How do you access finding the right place? Because
yeah.
I mean, just as we close this episode, if you're a special needs mom trying to figure out how to make this choice, we know that there's a lot that goes into it. Like there is a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot that takes away opportunities or brings them. But there are cool small business owners. There's a great way to write a resume to make it look like special needs momming is carrying the torch of many and superheroing all day long so you can get back into the workforce. Like there are ways to navigate opportunities.
Yeah. And the choice that you're making, it will work itself out,
Yeah.
You always make it work.
Because your kid's going to run away from daycare and show up at your work.
Yeah.
Mom,
Yeah.
are you done with work? Well, yes,
Yeah.
honey, I am.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yes. So this is just a little tip of the iceberg on work. We just wanted to do a quick introduction on, where we are now, we're going to dive into some of these more complicated concepts around work. And, stay tuned for that. Coming at you, episode 5, no reservations. We're going to, yes, talk a little bit more and close out our series. So we'll catch you for that one. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us at the table for episode 4 of our second series, The Mixtape of Us. Make sure to join us for episode 5, Where Are We From? Learn a little bit more about us and how we came together. To join in on the conversation, make sure you check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Table for 5 podcast. We'll see you soon.